everyone, and welcome to my best books of the year so far video. This year currently has only given me 5-star reads, and all of them are within the same series, but I have also read quite a few other really good books that I really enjoyed, so let's talk about them. First thing I have to mention has to be all 5 of those 5-star reads, and that was the Heartstopper series. I absolutely adored this series. I was not expecting to, because as you can see I am a hardcore sci-fi fantasy reader who doesn't really do romance, and this is a contemporary YA romance, and I absolutely loved it. I absolutely devoured this entire series in a day, immediately then went out and watched the TV show as well. Fell in love even more with Nick and Charlie, now have merch to do with it on my store, and I am just absolutely obsessed with it at this point. I love Heartstopper so much. It was an amazing series, and my only regret is not reading it sooner, because I had such a good time. It was so sweet, so cute, but also talking about like important topics as well, like coming out, eating disorders, being outed, all of these kind of things. Loved all of those conversations in there as well, and it was just generally an amazing time, and has made me rethink my I don't read YA or just romance in general. I also have to mention When Villains Rise by Rebecca Schaeffer. This is the final book in the Market of Monsters series, and this was so much fun. It is complete 180 compared to Heartstopper, because this is a very much romance less, like it's got no romance in it whatsoever. It's about monsters, it's about very morally grey characters trying to survive as everybody's trying to hunt them down and kill them, all of this kind of thing, and it was so much fun. This was such a good culmination of the entire series. It's what I call Wednesday Addams' favourite book, because it's dark, it's morally grey, you're dealing with a lot of like people making very questionable and brutal choices in a lot of ways, and I absolutely loved it. I adore this series so much. It's one of my favourites. It's absolutely one of my favourites. And to make it even better, this actually has a conversation in here as well about feeling very close to someone, but not really wanting to kiss them or go any further than that, not really feeling those types of romantic attraction either. They don't use the terms asexual or aromantic in here, because this world doesn't really seem to have that type of language, or at least the two characters in here don't have that language, but I definitely really appreciated that conversation within this book as well. I loved that, because as an asexual myself, that's not usually something I see, so that was also amazing. I loved this book. There's also N.K. Jemisin's The City We Became. I really enjoyed this one. It's a really like tough one to explain, because this is sort of like about the city of New York coming alive, and therefore there are sort of like avatars for each of the boroughs of New York also coming alive, and then they can sort of like feel the city, and they're like connected to each other, and they've got to try and save New York as it's being born, essentially, from like a multiversal threat. That's essentially it. It's very hard to explain, like I said. You've just got to run with me on this, but I had such a good time reading this one. I loved all of like the different characters who represent all the boroughs. I've never been to New York. I literally, all of my knowledge comes from like watching movies to do with New York, and it still felt like I was there. I really understood exactly what Jemisin was coming from with each of these like different characters and what they represented. I loved the diversity in here as well. I loved like the whole concept of it. Was really fun, really interesting. I will say that the multiversal stuff went slightly over my head, but to be fair, apart from that, I absolutely loved it. I still managed to muddle on through even through that multiversal stuff, and I have now got the sequel on pre-order, and that is not listed on here. I was waiting for the paperback so they match, but I'm so excited to read the sequel as well, because this one was so good. I loved it. We also have the Skullduggery Pleasant prequel, Hell Breaks Loose. This is set in the 1700s in Italy during the war that happens, has happened in this world, essentially between a very big powerful sorcerer called Mevlin, and we are dealing with the other sorcerers, specifically Skullduggery and his team of the Dead Men, who were essentially like the people you send in when you can't send anybody else in, because they are a bunch of badasses essentially, and we're following them as they actually have to try and save Mevlin for plot reasons in this book, and all of the conflict that brings up. And this was so much fun. I loved everything about this one. I love that we were in Ghastly's head for this one as well. We don't usually get like Ghastly's point of view. Ghastly actually hasn't been in the series since about midway through, so it was really nice to have a whole book centered in his head. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed like seeing a younger Skullduggery as well, and all of these dead men back again, because we haven't really seen them, like I said, since like Ghastly left the series actually. I just only had a really good time with this. The only thing I had with it is that I really wished that there had been some pop culture references in here, but because like that's one of the things I absolutely love about the Skullduggery series, but seeing as this was based in the 1700s, you can't really do that because those pop culture things wouldn't have happened, essentially. So Star Wars hadn't been invented, the Avengers weren't around, Stan Lee wasn't even born, you know, this kind of thing. So you can't really make those sort of jokes when those things haven't happened yet, so that was completely fine. And also I was a little bit confused about one of the other characters who pops up, because I was like, aren't you supposed to be dead at this point, which was a little bit confusing. But apart from that, I had an absolutely amazing time and I loved this book so much. And speaking of Derek Landy, I also have to mention All Out Avengers Teachable Moments. This is a Avengers comic, obviously, where the Avengers are being dropped into the middle of battles and they're like, how did we get here? How did we find out about this? Why are we here? And they're trying to figure out all of these kind of things, and they realise that someone is trying to teach them things, clearly working towards a bigger battle, but they're like, we've got no idea what's going on, we don't know who's sending us these things or anything, and they've got to try and work that out and also survive through all of these battles, that kind of thing. I really enjoyed this one. I love the humour in here. I love like the art style as well, that was really nice. I really enjoyed the fact that it passed the Bechdel test as well. I really enjoyed the fact that there's multiple characters of colour in here as well, because that doesn't usually happen within comics generally unless they're set in Wakanda or something, so it was really nice to see like a more diverse team of characters, to be honest. And I just generally really love this one, and I cannot wait for the sequel to come out because I love this so much. I also have Lost in the Moment and Found by Shauna Maguire. This time we're following Antsy in the Wayward Children series. This is introducing her character and her world, and she ends up in a shop where the lost things go, essentially. And this one explores more of like what the portals are and the cost of these types of things, all of this kind of thing. I really enjoyed it. I really loved how this sort of expanded more on the world of the Wayward Children, all the rest of it. It was so much fun, and I cannot wait for the sequel to come out, because the next one involves dinosaurs. Even a small bit, it still involves dinosaurs, which is very exciting to me because I love dinosaurs. So either way, this is just a solid series, to be fair, and I've loved every single one that's come out, and this one was no exception. I also have Demon in the Woods by Leigh Bardugo and Danny Pendergast. This is a prequel all about the Darkling from the Shadow and Bone series, and the artwork in here is absolutely stunning. I love the artwork. I loved getting inside the Darkling's head, finding out more of his experiences from childhood, why he is like he is, all of this kind of thing. I absolutely loved all of those elements of it, and I literally read it in 20 minutes because I just got completely and utterly sucked in and I couldn't stop reading. It was so good. I also as well have The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. This one is based on 1001 Nights, if I remember rightly. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 1001 Nights, but it actually covers a lot of like the different stories told within there, and it's like based on all of those stories and this kind of thing, and the way it weaves those stories throughout this book is so good, and it actually writes them out on like parchment like this, so you can actually see it on like the parchment paper, and bits like this, which really sort of like brings you into the story in a lot of ways. I love as well like the characters of here, the world building, the storyline, everything else was absolutely incredible, and I immediately booked the next one on pre-order because I love this one so much. It was so much fun. There's also The Marvellers. I read this one last week actually, and I really enjoyed it. It was a middle grade book all about a young girl who is being sent off to the Marvellers school, and the Marvellers are essentially a like group of magicians. Essentially they are like the sorcerers of the world, but the problem is that she is a conjurer, and she's the first conjurer to go to this school, and it's all about like the prejudice she's facing and all of this kind of thing, while also trying to like fit in everything else and figure out a couple of mysteries that's also going on throughout the school. And I really liked this one. I had a really good time reading it. I will say it's a little bit whimsical, and it's edging a little bit towards the too whimsical for my tastes, but I still had a really good time reading this. I had a really like wonderful time, like finding out more about this world and trying to figure out the mysteries of it. I will say that I do wish there had been a little bit more to do with like the villain and a little bit more foreshadowing and stuff, because that felt like it came a little bit left field. But apart from that, I had a really good time reading it, and I have immediately pre-ordered as well with the sequel because I really want to read more, because I had such a good time with this one. And then finally, I have to mention Rocket Raccoon by Skottie Young. This was an amazing duology of comics. We're following Rocket throughout a couple of like various different short stories, this kind of thing, as he's travelling around the galaxy causing havoc, generally being Rocket essentially. And it was a really good time. It was filled with like all those Skottie Young-isms that I really enjoy, like the fact that at one point Rocket hits someone and it literally on the speech bubble goes concussion and things like this, which I found very funny. It reminded me a lot of I Hate Fairyland, which is my favourite Skottie Young series ever, or at least one of them I should say. I've loved everything Skottie Young's written that I've read so far, but I really enjoyed like that sense of humour about it. It really made me appreciate Rocket even more than I thought possible, considering I already absolutely adore Rocket, and then obviously I saw Guardians 3. It tore my heart out and made me love Rocket even more after that. But I just generally really enjoyed this comic, and I highly recommend it if you are new to Marvel Comics and you just want to read some Rocket or anything. Skottie Young is definitely the way to go about it. And that's where I'm going to leave this, because I've run out of books to talk about, and it's also very hot in my room right now because I'm filming this in the middle of a heat wave and I am slowly melting.